How was episode 1 of the Halo TV show? Well, guys, we're going to break it down here. Of course, we will be talking all spoilers and give a final rating at the end of the video. Now, this is difficult because I will try not to be biased. I will try to forget about Master Cheeks, Jimmy Ring slapping cheeks in the first season. Of course, a lot has changed, and I have quite a lot to say about this season. I gotta say, right out of the gates, the intro is phenomenal, and I'm not saying that to hype this up. I'm just saying the mix between Halo 2, Halo 3, Halo Infinite score with this beautiful progression and also evolution on top, like a continuation of this classic theme, is amazing, and you can hear that right now with the music. It's, you know, it was amazing. It was like receiving your first golden shower, but if you were into that. Madrigal got glassed. I am so glad Madrigal just got destroyed. We even get to see it, which is just a little bit of a cherry on top. I actually burst out laughing when I saw that. So in general, it's nice to see the Halo universe actually get actualized, to actually see it on with a budget, right? With, you know, the characters, the cast, the sets, the lighting. It's all very magical, you know, even if the story is a little bit rough. But before we get into that, the action is amazing. The story starts out on Sanctuary. The grapple hook was a nice touch with Master Chief zipping up the line. The Spartans, by the way, are talking and behaving like Spartans with a little bit of humor sprinkled in there, just like how I know them from the comics or books as well. And so, yeah. The combat was amazing. The dialogue was much better, honestly. And the civilians, by the way, I will say, were acting a little bit like NPCs. And this is what did kind of bother me in the season 1, was that they were kind of acting like NPCs as well. I'm not sure what it is with the acting or the writing or something about like side characters, like the cult here in this case in the beginning of the episode. It was just weird, I gotta say. But let's talk about James Ackerson, man. He was an amazing cast. The dialogue, the exchange of characters has clearly improved. And yes, Chief has his helmet off a lot in episode 1, but it turns out it isn't actually that bad in the circumstances anyway, because he doesn't have them, you know, it off during combat or moving around. And, you know, I feel like we actually got a glimpse of how the real Master Chief would behave. It feels like a tug of war between like Paramount writers wanting to make this into their own character and some gravity that this is like pulling like a real Master Chief, and maybe he's just developing into the Chief that we know. I'm not quite sure, but it feels like there was a tug of war between Virgin Chief and real Chief, right? So Vanek actually took out his little pod or whatever in his spine. Actually, I think they all have. And there's actually a confrontation with other Spartans kind of acknowledging that. And I feel like it's kind of strange that, like, you know, their superiors like James Ackerson or anyone really has a problem with it, because apparently the words got out that they all took out their pellets. So I feel like they would want to deal with that. You know, they were put there for a reason. But yeah, as we know from James Ackerson talking about how he's kind of shelved, you know, Silver Team, and that he's not using them for combat because they're all kind of like potentially unhinged, kind of makes sense in that regard. But I'm kind of jumping around here. The beginning, the glassing scene was amazing. The cult people walking into the glass was actually beyond stupid. That really annoyed me. There's still some lazy plot devices too. So hopefully you don't mind me jumping around. But Master Chief, when he goes to Rubble, when he goes into the jerk-off station with the AI, by the way, which is honestly the big sin of this episode, and we will talk about that later. But when he runs into the lady, Paragoski lady that was right above Halsey in the first season, well, she's like gone AWOL too or whatever and just living as a regular Joe. Something about how her delivery there was just, I don't know what it was. It just felt weird. It didn't feel like something she would say. But anyway, she hands him a chip. So if he ever needs to contact her, he just presses this chip. The fact that they met in the elevator just so happened to be in the same place at the same time. Maybe she was doing the jerk-off station too. I don't know. But it just felt like really lazy, convenient writing. Hopefully this is just because they got more intricate, cooler things on the way and just had to get this out of the way. So I don't know. But let's talk a little bit more about the middle of the episode. James Ackerson bullying on Chief was actually extremely well played. I was a little bit concerned about how James Ackerson is actually a psychopath and Chief is like an 11-year-old boy. Like, of course, it's going to be really easy to manipulate him. Well, I feel like Jimmy Rings has actually really matured in this season, right? You can feel it. You know, he feels like an adult now. He doesn't go blah, 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 blah. At least in episode 1, maybe episode 2, which I haven't seen yet. But it's just, it feels like he's matured quite a bit. Maybe he does talk a little bit too much for some people's taste. He does talk a lot in the books. That's not really the problem here. It's just the problem was in season 1, he didn't really feel like Chief. Here, he kind of actually does, right? Like I said, it's kind of like a tug of war. Sometimes he behaves like Virgin Chief. Sometimes he behaves like Jimmy Rings, but you know, I think it's like a nice middle ground. Maybe season 3 and season 4, if those get greenlit, maybe, just maybe, this might actually start feeling like actually our Chief, right? So also the general vibe here is that there was like a propaganda scene where James Ackerson is lying to the public how we're winning the war, which actually does happen in lore, which is kind of cool to see it, that clearly we know what's happening, and it's nice to see a perspective of like civilians and the difference between that, because that's something we never really got to see in the games and books. We kind of know what the Covenant's motive is, but the UNSC actually doesn't until the very end of the war in Halo lore. So it's cool to see how the UNSC and humanity still doesn't even know why they're being exterminated. It's still interesting to see they don't really understand the motives, and Chief is piecing this together, so it's kind of really cool to see that, just like how it kind of happened in the games. So it all kind of reminds me of why I fell in love with Halo in the first place. You know, feeling like humanity is backed into a corner is a cool feeling, right? And we know Reach is about to face Judgment Day, so I'm really excited to see that, right? The propaganda was really well played. James Ackerson was really well played too. Great acting, great role, great cast overall. I just love his performance. I love his dynamic, and I love that he's replaced Halsey. You know, it's just a really cool mix-up. You know, whereas Halsey was, you know, good and bad in her own ways, Ackerson just seems to be mostly bad here. Anyway, Soren, we have a side plot B with Soren, how he gets kind of tricked into helping a slave or whatever, slave that knows the location of Dr. Halsey. And I think it was well played, right? I don't think there was much foreshadowing, so maybe kind of a lazy plot twist, but Soren is under arrest. I thought that was pretty, you know, out there. And I mean, I think Soren even having a spot here this much and this intimately with Halo lore is interesting. I always thought he was pretty cool in the books, and we really never got to see his story fleshed out in such a interesting way, right? With that being said, do I think this is kind of a waste of time? Yes. However, Soren talking to his son about how the monster doesn't really exist is actually really good. Of course, children are going to get wind of the Covenant, right? And hearing about this would be terrifying in real life. And so calling it the monster just seemed to be really fitting. You know, it is scary. Humanity is being wiped out off the map. They are glassing planets left and right. And finally, we got some visualization of that, including Madrigal, right? So it was cool to see that, right? So I really love seeing some of these elements come out and be visualized for once in Halo lore instead of just reading about it in the books. I think Reach is more interesting to focus on. I really hope we don't get much time worrying about Soren and Quan Ha, because the episode ends with Quan Ha, and she's kind of propped up as kind of a wise person now, a person that knows everything now. It feels like she's marking things on a rock wall, monologuing to a 10-year-old boy, Soren's son. So it's just, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know where it's gonna go. Is it gonna be stupid stuff? Probably. But the big sin of this episode that probably knocked it down a few points for me is the AI jerk off room. That was cringe. So on Rebel, there's these rooms where you can pay an AI to just be your, you know, personal strip dancer or like emotional support buddy. And Chief actually goes to Rebel, and it's amazing how he can just leave Reach and no one cares or notices. I think there's going to be I just got finished watching episode 1, but there's a few things that are kind of like big dumb things like this. Like, how can he go to this rebel place and no one knows that he's even there? And how he goes in there incognito and he happens to run in with like other big military personnel. It's just weird to me. Anyway, Chief is talking to this AI. He's talking about how there's like a piece of him missing, and it's strange because we don't really even know if he's talking about Cortana or Maquis. I think he's talking about Maquis, but maybe it's Cortana. The AI looks a lot like Cortana, has the same hair. Honestly, this whole thing just cringe. It was just big cringe. And so, yeah, if we look at the poll, we have a lot of y'all, almost 50% of y'all saying that the first episode was mid, 17% was pretty good. Some people said it was amazing, but the second big runner is very bad at 23%. And so last time I checked, this was about 3 stars out of 5 in general, maybe a little bit less. But yeah, so it seems like a lot of y'all are saying that this is, a little bit above average, a little bit above mid, right? And so yeah, that's kind of nice to see. It's nice to hear. I thought this was a great episode. To give you my rating, I think it was an 8 out of 10 or a 4 out of 5. And I say that because overall the episode was pretty good. There was a few nuggets of cringe and weirdness, but that was kind of isolated to dialogue and interactions versus entire plot lines. So far, there's no plot lines making me cringe or want to yell out that this is stupid. I'm glad we're not getting any big storyline about Madrigal, at least yet. We know that the planet's been glassed. I'm so happy Madrigal got glassed. And I don't know who I should thank. Thank you, the writers or Paramount, for maybe listening to me, or listening to everyone maybe. But I'm glad that the Madrigal plot line got ditched, got glassed. Everyone there's dead. I'm just so glad about that ending. We'll probably get some stuff about like the villain on Madrigal, the governor, but I'm just glad that the whole planet got glassed and that at least Quan Ha can see that the real threat of humanity is not the UNSC, it's the Covenant. So anyways, what do you guys think? Let me know down in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one soon. Peace.